Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we get started today, I want to let you guys know that this episode is brought to you by the online course, Creating a Meaningful Life. Now, this course is the culmination of 20 years of work and research by my personal mentor and university professor, Linda Levine, and myself. Now, in it, we teach not only the skills and strategies that we've used and taught and which are being used by life coaches all over the world to create a life of fulfillment and balance, but we also go into how you can design your lifestyle, how you can improve in every aspect, all 8 of the aspects that make a complete and rich life. And really, we share a lot of our wisdom. So if you've been inspired by the show, by some of the guests on here who seem to have these incredibly rich, fulfilling lives, I do encourage you to check it out. And of course, it is backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. So to take advantage of a special coupon for listeners of this podcast, visit jle.vi/meaning. All right, here we go with the show. Greetings, super friends, and welcome to this week's show. You guys, today we are joined by Alec Charfen, who is a serial entrepreneur who spent his entire life seeking to understand how to make businesses grow. And that question eventually evolved into wondering, well, how do you help people grow? Now, through his research and years as a consultant to billionaires, Fortune 500, Global 100, basically all the top brass you can think of, Alex discovered what he calls the long misunderstood entrepreneurial personality type, or EPT. Best-selling author Robin Sharma recently described Alex as the most progressive entrepreneurial mind on the planet, and I think for good reason. You see, since the age of 8, Alex has been starting, growing, and selling businesses, and then teaching tens of thousands of people all over the world how to do the same. He's even been a regular contributor to the Wall Street Journal, MSNBC, CNBC, Fox News, USA Today, you name it. Now, as you guys know, we don't often talk about entrepreneurship on the show, and we prefer to focus more on health and fitness. Well, Alex has some important things to say about that as well, but more importantly, I think that this episode fits into an important area of reaching one's true superhuman potential, which is financial freedom and creating a balanced, healthy, happy life. So while entrepreneurship may or may not be for you, and we actually talk about whether or not it is and how you can discover whether or not it is, I think either way, you're going to take away some amazing lessons from Alex and everything that he has to say, which ranges from entrepreneurship advice to inspiration to motivation to a huge health tip and even some tips on how to improve your romantic life. In fact, on that note, the episode actually got deeply personal, and at one point, Alex launches into full-on coaching mode, turning the mic back on me and coaching me through one of my biggest struggles at the moment. So I have to admit, guys, this was a huge moment of vulnerability, and I fought the urge to get embarrassed about it. I think most people probably wouldn't broadcast that piece of the episode to thousands of people all over the world, but you know what? I decided to leave it in. I think there's a ton of value and applicable takeaways there, and if it benefits just one person, I think it will have been worth me blushing a little bit here in the studio. So let me know via Twitter or via email what you guys think about that component and about the episode as a whole. By the way, if you guys do decide that you are interested in entrepreneurship and you want to make a killer living, inspiring and helping other people, teaching them your knowledge, whatever that knowledge may be, I want to tell you about this episode's sponsor, which is the online course, Branding You. Learn how to create a multimedia internet empire. This is a course that was created by myself and Dr. Anthony Metivier. We go into how to create the books, how to create the podcasts, how to link it all together, how to do the online courses, how to make 6-figure income, basically doing what you love, teaching other people and inspiring other wonderful humans out there the way that myself and Dr. Metivier have been so blessed to do. So if you want to check that out and get an unbelievable I think it's 80%, might even be 90% off that course. Just visit jle.vi/brandingyou. No dashes, no spaces, just jle.vi, branding you. All right, guys, without any further ado, let me present to you this fantastic episode with my new super friend, Alex Scharffen. Mr. Alex Charfen, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Jonathan. Thanks for having me, man. I've been looking forward to this.
As have I. Absolute pleasure. You're my first episode back after vacation, so I'm pretty amplified, pretty ready to get back into the groove of things.
Well, then let's make this happen, Jonathan.
Let's do it. So, Alex, I hate to start off on a sad note, but I have to say I was actually completely overwhelmed by your bio. I was like, man, this guy just couldn't get a break. So tell our audience a little bit about your situation and some of the adversities you faced, and then we'll get, I promise, straight into the happy and the positive and the magical stuff.
Yeah, Jonathan, it's funny. When people read my bio, they often have that reaction. I don't have that reaction. I kind of look at my life as everything that it should have been to get me here. I definitely struggled when I was younger, and there were things that I don't think should have happened. And I'm pretty vocal about them because I think there's a lot of kids like me out there who are having those same things happen, and we could change things. I grew up knowing I was fundamentally different than other people. Jonathan, how old were you when you figured out you were different?
Oh, I think I was about 13, 14.
So when you were younger than that, you got along in school?
All right. Fair. I might have been like 7 or 8, but I think it dawned on me. I think I really realized, like, you know what? I'm never going to be one of the cool kids. I think was like 13, 14.
But prior to that, you were wondering things like, wow, why am I different? Why does everybody seem to be doing okay and I'm not? Why am I confused when the rest of the team's not? Those types of things, right?
Right.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I'm really in touch with it. And I talk about it openly because I think that these days, there's this equation in the world that if you don't look like everyone else, talk like everyone else, read like everyone else, then you're a broken person. We should medicate you, put you in a special class, separate you from the tribe. And the fact is that throughout history, the people who didn't talk like everyone else, didn't look like everyone else, didn't learn like everyone else, were brilliant people who changed the world. Thomas Edison was kicked out of school. Edison failed algebra twice. There's a pattern here we are not picking up on. Mm-hmm. And so when I was younger, I didn't get along with really a lot of people. And so I isolated and I read, and I obsessively read about success. And I think that the very thing, the isolation that pushed me away from people, is why I'm successful today, because naturally I'm a failure at just about everything. I've had to work hard for any success that I've had. And I think that obsessive reading when I was younger, reading about people who had been successful, what happens, Jonathan, is if you read the biographies of 10 entrepreneurs, they all look different. You read the biographies of 100, you might even start to see some similarities. But when you read the biographies of hundreds and then transition to thousands, you start seeing that the people who changed the world, the ones that you remember, the ones who matter to be remembered, are just like us. So I definitely had a hard time growing up, but it pushed me to discover that even though I thought, that I was isolated, different, alone, and even felt like a party of one, that when you look at everyone who's ever been successful in history, you and I are part of that club.
Mm-hmm. What did those hardships look like for you? Was it social? Was it familial? Was it all of the above?
No, I had an incredible family. My family, I think, saved me. Social was very difficult for me. I didn't get along well with other kids in school. I also didn't learn like most kids. I didn't learn it in a linear pattern. So I went from special education in California in the 1970s, which was for kids who didn't learn as fast, to the next year I was in gifted and talented education, which was for kids who were smarter. And then the year after that, I just went back to regular classes. So it was guardrail to guardrail. I didn't know whether I was coming or going. And most everything was confusing to me.
Wow. So I think it's really interesting, Alex, and I tell this kind of story in my TEDx talk. You and I both found the same path out of our, dare I say, insecurities, but also our challenges and these kinds of crises of who am I, and what am I worth? So tell us the story of how you discovered entrepreneurship and how that became your thing, your way to understand that you were different in a good way.
I was 8 years old, and my father had a business. And when I was about 5, I started going to the business with him. And in the rest of the world, I felt pretty isolated and alone. And I wasn't good at being anywhere. I don't know if you can relate to that, Jonathan, but like when I was in class, I wasn't good at being in class. I wasn't good at being on the baseball field. I wasn't good at being in PE. So, I found places where I didn't really have to be. And when I went to my dad's business for the first time, there was kind of a different structure and an order to it, and people were nice, and I liked it. I mean, I didn't get in trouble there.
Wow.
And business it called to me. It wasn't so much did I find it. I think it found me. And when I was 8, my dad's business failed. And that was this huge transition for me as a kid because I really liked going there. I remember being there the day that they auctioned everything off. And there was a drill press and a drinking fountain left. And my dad got the drill press. And that lived in our garage for 10 years. And I'd go out and look at it and remember the business. And shortly after that, to make a living, my dad started selling stuff in a swap meet, like a flea market. And I went with him. And I think I was 8.5 or 9. And we got up at 4:30 in the morning, which is when I still get up now, so that we could get there early enough to get a space. And we went to the La Mirada swap meet in Southern California. And my dad had bought tiny calculators, pens with a clock in them, and I think some 3-wheel bicycles or something, all in LA. And we went there to basically sell them and see if we could make money. And within the first 10 minutes of being there, a woman walked up, and I remember telling her about the pen I was holding, and she bought it. And for the first time in my life, like, I produced something. That was me. And I never stopped.
Amazing. And what's also amazing is I have such a similar story, and I can relate so much to that moment of like, wait a minute, like, you needed me here. I did something to help this and help this person get what they needed and, turn a profit doing it. So that's incredible. And it basically, as you say, you never stopped. You turned around and sold a company at the age of 16, at the age of 21. I have to say I'm a little jealous because I didn't sell my first till I was 23. So well done on that. My hat's off to you.
Not really. You know what? The story sounds so much cooler when you tell it like that. But when I was 16 years old, I actually sold when I was 17. When I was 16, some friends of mine and I started a company called Clear Outlook Window Washing, and we were washing windows in people's homes.
Cool.
And I basically knocked off this other company and just copied what they were doing. And then I did it way better. So I'd run it for about 9 months. I had 3 crews. I was making about $1,000 a week. And I went in to go sign all the paperwork for my second year in business with, all the workers' comp and all the stuff that you have to have when you've got like vans and stuff driving around. And everyone involved hadn't realized I was 17 or 16. Everyone assumed I was in my 20s. And so I was operating under all fraudulent stuff.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't that I committed fraud. I did commit fraud because I signed something when I was 18 and I wasn't, and I didn't know I was doing that. So I actually had to sell that business. And so it's not the coolest story ever. I didn't get anywhere near what that business was worth. I was really pissed off.
Well, so let me ask this, because you then went back and, most people to build a business, it takes, and I know the stats, right? I invest in startups, or I used to invest in startups, and it takes like 5 to 7 years to build a business. But you take that business at 17, and by 21, you're selling another business. By any measure, age independent, that's pretty quick. That's a pretty quick turnaround to success. So I guess the question I'm trying to get at is like, what was your secret to success? You go from this student, not confident in school, dare I say, like not succeeding in any kind of avenue that you found, you find this and suddenly, boom, you figure out, I'm hesitant to say a formula to success, but you obviously figured out some habits, some behaviors that made you successful in this new arena, which was business. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure, Jonathan. They carry over to today. So there's a little more to the story. When I was young, I actually sold candy in school. That was my first business. So I was making about $100 a week in junior high school.
Wow.
Yeah, I had 2 guys working for me, and I got shut down by the school district. So that was the first business that I lost. They actually had a school district. They passed the first rule was you can't sell candy. So then I started selling earrings and bracelets. Then it was you couldn't sell anything that part of the contribution wasn't to an approved charity. So then I started giving part of the contribution to charity. Then they said you couldn't do it unless I don't remember the next rule, but there was one more. And then they basically held the school board meeting and made it so that no student anywhere in the entire school district could sell anything without the principal's approval.
Wow.
It was called the Alec Charfen rule. It sucked. So that was the first business I lost. Then there was the window washing company. So in between that and the business that I ran in college with my friend Price, I got into another business that came with its own built-in marketing, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. It was drugs.
Yeah. So, I was going to say, are we going to say or just let the audience guess? But yeah, okay.
So
product sold itself.
Yeah, exactly. And after a very short period of time, I did not want to continue to be involved in that. I couldn't take the stress. I couldn't take the looking over my shoulder. It was just the hardest thing I'd done. And so I met, still to this day, my best friend in the world. We talk via text almost every day. His name's Price Gibbons. He lives in California. He's the smartest guy I've ever met. We started a billing and collections company called Fraternal Finance Consultants. And between really Price, but I helped a little, we figured out how to do automated billing at a time when there was no automated billing. This was the early 90s. The internet was just barely getting used. People were just barely getting URLs and email addresses. Mm-hmm. And here we were with a online automated scannable billing service. And we applied it to fraternities and sororities. So it sounds like a good story again, but we had like the Ferrari of billing services applied to this tiny little market at colleges. And so we were doing a lot of the billing and collections for most of the major fraternities and sororities, especially like you go to a campus like Miami of Ohio, and every fraternity that was based there, every sorority that was based there, we were working with them. And at 21, we decided we couldn't scale enough because that market was so small, and we'd been working together for a while, and there was a lot of water under the bridge. We needed a little break. So I sold the company to Price. He sold a software solution to another guy in Orlando, and I moved out to Orlando to work with the company and make a software transition. And I made it 8 months out of a 12-month contract and ended up in Orlando. My whole network was in California. I was 21. I had dropped out of school. I didn't really know anyone. So I was in a place where I had no experience, no resources, no network, no nothing. And I got lucky. A friend of mine had introduced me to a guy named Richard Thal, who's still in business. Richard was a consultant who had an office in New York. He had a interview with Fuji Media, that's Global 100. That's big time. They have a blimp. And we went to the meeting, and we were supposed to interview for New York and possibly Florida. Like we might be able to consult in Florida. And if we got Florida, I was going to start a company, work with Richard, run his Florida office, and grow a business. And it was a long shot. And what happened was, instead of going and getting New York, not Florida, we got Florida, not New York. Mm-hmm. So Jonathan, I was 21 years old, and for probably the third or fourth time in my life, I was deep into the pool, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Incredible. And yet you persevered.
Let me tell you what happened when I was a consultant. And I don't know if this is a skill, but it's something that I train and I talk about constantly with CEOs today. That interview put me into a world where immediately I was dealing with the most intense entrepreneurs on the planet. People who move the world around like puzzle pieces. Computer electronics, consumer electronics. First I started working with Fuji, then SanDisk, then Fuji Digital. Then we worked with companies like Bose, Microsoft, Home Shopping Network, Walmart, Radio Shack. That was a lot. And I remember when I was in my first few meetings, here I was, this new role called consultant. And I worked with my dad for a long time. I had obsessively read about business. I knew the tactics of business, and I understood some of what happened in relationships. But man, did people confuse me. Can you relate?
Yeah, definitely.
So I remember being in this meeting, and I was in that place where I'm looking around the table and I'm thinking, not one person's talking to each other in here. We're all saying stuff. There's no connection. I don't think this shit's going to work. Have you ever been in a situation like that, Jonathan, where everybody else is doing something and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, the time before that I had felt that was in school. And I'm going to see if maybe you have a similar feeling. But I remember in school, like sometimes the teacher would say something wrong. Like they'd be reading, they'd use the wrong word. Or they'd ask a question and I'd know the answer, but I knew that if I gave the answer, the whole class was going to make fun of me. Or there was just something that popped into my head where I was literally in my head saying, do not say this, do not say this, do not say this. And then almost like I was watching someone else, I said it. Do you remember having that happen to you?
Definitely.
Okay. That happened that day. And I said, hey guys, I don't think this is going to work. Everybody really isn't communicating. And I think we need to take a step back, address the fact that there's some tension in the room and some communication issues. And then I think we should address this again because we're pretending like something's going to happen. It's really not.
Right. Hot knife through butter.
And I remember that the guy at the head of the table, his face flushed. It got red. And I thought, oh, like shit, that's the important person in the room. And I just pissed him off. And I remember he took this like really aggressive breath in through his nose and blew out through his mouth. And I remember thinking, that's what guys do, right? I did martial arts when I was a little older. And I remember thinking, like, right before the referee says go, that's what guys are doing. Like, he's about to take my head off. And he turned to me and he said, it's about time somebody says it. We're all sitting here glad handing and pussyfooting, and it takes the kid in the corner who doesn't look like he shaves to say something. And from that point forward, I'm not shitting you. From that point forward, I was a trusted advisor.
Brilliant.
And here's what's so weird, Jonathan. The same skill, the same attributes, the same abilities that I had when I was in school that got me made fun of, told to sit down, shut up, sent to the principal's office, all of those things. Because when I corrected a teacher, I didn't get respect. When I said, hey, I don't think this is going to work, nobody understands, I wasn't told, hey, great job. Mm-hmm. But when I did that as a consultant, the most important people in the world pulled me close, put me on their jets, put me in the helicopters, and asked me for advice over and over again.
So that's a big, big point, Alex, that I want to pull out, which is divergent thinking is a hugely underrated skill. And also being the one person in the room who's willing to kind of step over these social boundaries.
I call it transparency. The more transparent we are as human beings, the more we are willing to let people know what's really going on for us, the more we say out loud what we're actually feeling in factual terms, not talking about your feelings, because that's just noise. Nobody wants to hear about your feelings.
Totally.
If I had said that day, hey guys, I'm feeling really confused and I'm feeling frustrated with everyone and I'm feeling irritated, they would have said, shut the hell up.
Yeah.
But if we are transparent and we tell people what's going on and we state things transparently, factually, and constructively, that's how you step into a leadership role in any room.
That's huge. That's a huge takeaway for anyone in the audience listening right now. Write that down, because I can speak to what Alex is saying here, and also in my own businesses, the difference between success as a leader, success as a manager, even success as an underling or as an employee is how openly, how transparently are you willing to communicate? And I've found that transfers also into personal relationships. I mean, a family is just an organization like any other organization, where people need to have their expectations and needs met and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a huge, huge point on open communication.
Yeah, I mean, the transparency in personal relationships is a place where, guys like you and I and women like you and I really screw up.
Totally.
Because we're bad at saying what we want. And we're terrible at telling people what we really want to have happen and what we need. And we suck at asking for help.
Yeah.
Am I close?
You once were. I had to learn it the hard way. I had to build the business.
But you know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I, like you, had to learn it the hard way as a young 20-something who thought I knew everything in my organization, and no one felt that they could communicate openly enough to me that, hey, you little shit, you don't know what's going on the ground level of the company. So I've been there, and I've definitely felt that. You know what,
Jonathan? I'm at the place now where I would never say I was like that, because here's what I found. And this is maybe cautionary, or maybe it's just me sharing my experience, my personal experience. But each time that I've said, man, I've really got this communication thing wired, I'm really good at asking for help, I've really got my life grows and I suck again.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Exactly. I've realized every time you think you're smart, the universe has a way of correcting you.
Well, and if you're smart and if you're contribution based and you're doing the right things and you're growing a business and you're making a change in the world, the universe will continuously convince you you're not ready, because this is a universal law of growth and scale.
Totally.
If you want to grow or scale, you can't do so without daily behavioral change. Daily.
Totally. I heard a quote recently, very recently, which is, the most important thing is to be ready to let go of everything you are to become everything you could be. I think that's so profound in exactly that sense.
I have a process that I walk entrepreneurs through where I ask them, we get on the phone and I help them get clarity around their lives. And then one of the questions I ask them, and I'll ask you, Jonathan, how important is what you're doing right now to you?
Ooh, I would say about an 8 out of 10.
So what would make it a 10 out of 10?
I think if I had my family life, we'll get real open and transparent here and vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think if I had my family life dialed in, then I would feel less guilty about working and, I could focus more on that. But right now, every moment spent on work is a moment not spent on, the things that quote unquote matter in life. And I think matter at my current stage in life, which is building a family, building a home.
Do you have a family right now?
I don't.
Do you have a significant other?
I don't. So if anyone in the audience is listening,
Jonathan is single. Late night walks on the beach, a little bit of wine. Just kidding. So can I ask you a few more questions? Is that cool, Jonathan?
Yeah, sure. We can turn the interview around a little bit.
Well, I've helped a lot of entrepreneurs through this, and I think it might help your audience too.
Let's do it.
Because I asked, how important is what you're doing to you right now? And you said 8 out of 10 because there's other things that are also important to you. But I'll ask you where you're spending your time.
Oh, yeah. Inevitably, I end up spending them on the easiest route, which is in work. You put more time into work. It's the path of least resistance.
Then let's just make something clear. Then we know that this is right now incredibly important to you, probably more than an 8 out of 10.
Probably, yeah.
Is the contribution you're making, is the difference you're making when you get an email from someone that says you helped them out? What does that mean to you?
A lot.
How much?
Whew. That's closer to a 9 out of 10.
How important is it to you to have a family?
A 10 out of 10.
Okay. So here's what I tell entrepreneurs every time we get to a 10 out of 10. You can have it. All you have to do is be willing to change everything.
Yep.
And here's why I say that. And it's not just me being theoretical or philosophical. If you don't have the relationship you want, if you don't have the business you want, if you don't have the family you want, you have not become the person who should have it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're willing to make the behavioral change, like I can hear in you, you're at that place where you're ready to make the change, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I have a question for you, Jonathan. To this point, how long has this relationship issue been something that's been bothering you?
A couple of years now. A few years.
2 years. Maybe a little longer, right?
Yeah, like 3.
Okay. And prior to that, it didn't bother you?
Prior to that, I didn't have time to think about it.
So now it's something you have been thinking about.
Yeah.
For at least 3 years.
Yep.
How's it going?
Not very well.
So tell me, what so far? Just give me a kind of a description of what's happened so far in the last 3 years of thinking about this.
I think just frustration, a series of kind of breakthroughs that weren't breakthroughs, and just a lot of like loss of hope, I think. Not in a fatalistic way, but in a kind of like, maybe I need to adjust expectations to improve outcomes kind of way.
Yeah, almost like maybe I'm being unrealistic as to what I could have.
Totally.
Okay. So far, what have you been trying?
Well, I mean, I've tried all kinds of things. Different types of people, different walks of life, different areas, different social circles, different approaches, different dynamics, different levels of intensity.
Okay. What are you looking for?
A partner who inspires me, I think.
Okay. So here's what I do with entrepreneurs like us, Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the reason that we have a hard time pursuing the relationship we want, finding the relationship we want. And by the way, you can insert business, whatever business or career or whatever it is because we don't have a system or structure around what we're looking for. Because here's what I've already heard in our conversation. When you have a structure or a system, you kick ass.
Fair.
Right?
I would say so, yeah. Thank you.
Well, let me ask you a simple question. If a scoreboard's important to you, what position do you end up in?
Usually, if I can control most of the factors, I mean, if it doesn't have to do with height or kind of genetic outcome, then yeah, usually close to the top.
If it's a fair game and the scoreboard's important to you, where are you?
Usually close to the top.
All right. So we know that with a structure, you can create forward momentum, you can find what you want, and you can win. Here's the issue for every one of us. We don't have a structure around how to go out and find the relationship we want.
Totally.
And when we create that structure, and I've helped a lot of entrepreneurs with this. We have an online product called Awaken Your Superpower that goes through this framework. But here's a suggestion for you, Jonathan. It kind of skips towards the end, but this is a shortcut that I've helped a lot of people through. And anyone listening can do the same thing. If you're looking for a relationship, sit down and write out the 10 things in the person that you're really looking for. And I want to make something clear. This isn't like I want blonde hair and somebody who's the right height, because that doesn't really matter.
Right.
That'll take care of itself. And here's what I mean by that. You're not going to walk up to people you're unattracted to and say, hey, is this a person for me? But Jonathan, just having listened to you, don't you think the person who's going to end up with you needs to be somebody who's willing to maybe live a little bit different than the rest of the world?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's maybe 1 out of 10.
Right.
You know, if you can write these things out and get clarity around it, that provides the basis, the beginning for the structure around how we bring these things into our lives.
Yeah. And I mean, I have written out a list. I think where I struggle, to your point, is, I have a structure of like X number of new people that I need to meet and X amount of hours that I need to spend getting to know those people. But that is not really an indicator of success. And so, I can create KPIs in my business and say, we need to meet this metric. We need to get this many new students. We need to reach this many downloads of the podcast. But it's a little bit harder to find, determine, set, and actualize KPIs for human relationships, whether that's building out a social circle, whether that's building out a mastermind of other entrepreneurs, improving your family life. I mean, it's not just a romantic issue. You can say, I need to spend 10 hours a week with my family, but that's not actually going to move the needle in terms of family satisfaction if that's crap time in front of the TV.
Makes sense.
I think that's interesting.
For you, tell me, what are you looking for in this person? Give me an idea. Like, you have a list, right?
Yeah, totally. Ambition.
What does that mean?
It means someone who's willing to, interested in, and probably already in the process of impacting many people's lives on a global scale.
That's different than ambition.
Is it?
Well, I mean, I know ambitious lawyers who have a 3-person firm.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So you're looking for somebody, and I think like maybe if, you're recording this, you can play it back to yourself, but write down someone who is looking at that. Because Jonathan, you know what happens? So tell me what else. That's a good one. What else?
I would say worldliness, kind of being well-read, well-educated, and not in the traditional sense of educated, but autodidactic, interested in expansion of self, knowledge, wisdom.
So you're looking for somebody who's a lifelong learner.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Who's passionate about improving themselves.
Absolutely. Physically, mentally, spiritually, not just someone who's like a bookworm or a fitness geek, but like a well-rounded human being.
So you're looking for someone who wants to experience life to the fullest and is willing to do the work to get there.
Absolutely.
So that's a good thing to write down. That's not everybody, and it's an easy question to ask up front.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
So give me one more. Let me help you clarify one more. Because, man, if you get to 10 of these, Jonathan, you start walking into every room with confidence because you're like, if she's here, I'll find her. And if she's not, I don't have to waste my time.
I love it. I think the other thing is kind of a modern approach to what a family is, what a relationship is, a modern and pragmatic approach. Like, I have some kind of polarizing views on how family should be and what monogamy looks like and if it works and things like that. So open-minded and communicative to like the modern realities of what a relationship is, I think. And I'm not really sure what that means yet, but...
So define that a little bit more for me. Does that mean that it's somebody who is willing to work through the struggles in a different way than what you've observed in the past?
Totally. Yeah.
How is it different?
It's more communicative and more realistic and pragmatic. I don't believe that human beings are meant to be emotionally or physically monogamous, in the sense I think it's unrealistic that, people are expected to love only one person. And that can mean like a ton of boundaries and caveats, but I think we have to be realistic and pragmatic about it.
Are you open to, if you meet the right person and they affect you in a different way, that could be a reality?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
I'd be surprised, but I'd be open to it.
So is it fair that maybe you're looking for someone who doesn't have a concrete definition of what relationship is, but they're willing to build it with you?
Precisely.
That's a good way. That's a good thing to put down, because that's one that's really easy. So see, what happens is people like you and I could hear it in your voice at the beginning of, when I started asking questions, we beat ourselves up a little bit because we don't find success here. Mm-hmm. And we feel like we've tried everything. Like, have you ever felt that? Like, shit, what do I do?
Yeah.
So here's what we've never done. And this is what you just did, Jonathan. I want to congratulate you for doing it, because you're doing it on your own podcast, which isn't easy.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of vulnerability here, but we'll leave it in.
Here's what you just did. you just stated what you want. And you know what people like us suck at doing is stating what we want.
Yeah.
And when we do it, more often than not, that's what's automatically, almost magnetically attracted into our lives. I think things change for you from this conversation forward.
I'd love to see it. That would be a pretty impressive testimonial to your coaching skills, Alex.
Well, I have the confidence of experience that when somebody goes through even the slight thought process you just did, it starts rattling around a whole new world of possibilities, doesn't it?
For sure. It also doesn't hurt that thousands of people now know what I'm looking for.
Dude, it's like we're doing pretty well here for you.
Right? Amazing. So, Alex, I wanted to ask you, I mean, what you do today. We didn't even cover that, but I think our audience probably realizes by now that you coach some of the top CEOs in the world. So let me ask a different question, which is, what is your superpower? And thank you, by the way, for that incredible aside coaching session. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, man. My pleasure. I think you're a unique individual. And what I know about guys like you, Jonathan, is when you resolve the core issue in your life, like relationship, even when you commit to resolving core issue in your life, like relationship, and define what you want, that is the type of thing that makes everything in your life easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it gives you momentum everywhere, because when you can shed off I still not in a relationship, that meta pattern that is beating you up all the time, and you can say, oh, wait, I defined that. I know what I want. It'll come to me. It changes everything. So I'm sorry, I blocked out the question. What was the question?
No worries. The question was, what's your superpower?
So I would have answered this in a bunch of different ways in the past. But I think today, my superpower is that I'm aware of where I have deficit and weakness and voids, and I become more aware every day. Mm-hmm. And that in creating systems and process around those, I can coach people who are like me, and I can help people who are like me to create success in their lives in the places where I'm good at what I do. And I think that's the first one. And the second one is, I think I have a unique ability to put people together in teams and partnerships and in associations that create a 1 + 1 = 11, not a 1 + 1 = 2.
Right. Incredible. Those are incredible superpowers. So let me ask you this then. Being someone who comes from the background of accelerated learning and also someone who struggled with kind of quote unquote learning disabilities and managed to find a way around them, how do you learn? I mean, do you feel that you have some different strategies or habits that have made you more effective than others when it comes to learning, these skills that have made you so successful?
No question. I can give you my direct strategies for how I run my life today.
Let's do it.
I don't look at forward learning as something that I proactively have to go do, because I follow a different equation. I think that the majority of entrepreneurs out there today are walking around trying to fix themselves. And it sucks. It makes me defensive and sad, because I don't know of any entrepreneur in the world who's ever been able to fix themselves. Here's what I know. Every entrepreneur I've ever been around, every friend I've ever had who has had, 10-figure net worth or more, is one of those people who leans into their strengths and who focuses exclusively on what they're good at. But it's hard to do that when you're going through life trying to survive. So I follow this path. The first thing that I do to work in my strengths is I lower pressure and noise every single day. That's how I learn. That's how I create progress. I make sure that I'm defensive about my schedule. I don't have noise around me. I have the right people around me. I go to the right places. I don't have things around me that bother me. If something triggers me, I move it out of my life, or I resolve to figure out why. Mm-hmm. The second step is I ask for and I give protection and support to the people around me. So I have a team, and I, as transparently as I can, ask for help on a daily basis and tell them what's going on for me. And that creates a state of growth and a state of learning and a state of experience that if you do those two things, you lower pressure and noise and you increase protection and support by transparently asking for it. The third step of this process is that your strengths and abilities will just show. Jonathan, this has happened to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, how many times in your life have you had a conversation, been asked a question, said something, and walked away thinking, where did that come from? Right?
Yeah.
So this is how we become everything we can become. This is how we become magical. And if anybody ever questions magical when I refer to entrepreneurs, if Oprah Winfrey mentions your name, you're a millionaire. That's magic.
Yeah.
If Elon Musk puts out a press release, the stock market moves. That's magic. If Warren Buffett sneezes in the right direction, billions of dollars are exchanged. That's magic. Right?
Yeah. So then is your learning style around it comes from knowledge of self, is what you're saying?
Absolutely. And here's the equation, Jonathan. Lower pressure and noise, increased protection and support, because the learning that happens there changes us as entrepreneurs. That is how we actualize. We actualize by figuring out on a daily basis that we have the value and we should be asking for help. And it is okay for us to say what we want. And then our strengths and abilities will show. And if you lower pressure and noise, increase protection and support, your strengths and abilities show, you can make your greatest contribution. And here's how I define contribution, because sometimes when I'm talking about it, people get confused and they think that I run a charity. I've made billions of dollars for my friends. I've made tens of millions for my family. And I help entrepreneurs grow and scale businesses beyond what they ever thought was possible. And I've done that for my whole career. But here's what I know about contribution. Capital flows to contribution. So when I talk about making your greatest contribution, I want you to make all the influence, all the affluence, and all the money you can. Because in a capitalist system, where there's the greatest contribution, you will always see the greatest capital.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. Let me ask you a tougher question, Alex, and I'm going to bite my tongue very intentionally on this one. Do you think entrepreneurship is for everyone?
No, I don't. Well, let me just tell you about the entrepreneurs I work with, Jonathan. I've had a very unique career, and I've been around some of the most unique people in the world. I've sat down with Sylvester Stallone for a day, got to hang out with Jack LaLanne. I met Suzanne Summers. Weird people. And I've gotten to meet and sit down and talk to and advise some of the most intense CEOs on the planet. And I don't think that being an entrepreneur is something you choose. The entire basis of my content, the entire basis of my belief system is that the entrepreneur is an entrepreneurial personality type. Because I think you and I are different than the rest of the world. See, psychologists don't understand people like you and I, because they say things like there's extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. That means there's something external or internal that's motivating you, Jonathan. Watch, I can disprove that shit in one question. Can you turn it off?
Nope.
Yeah. So psychology, they don't understand us. They call us stuff like hyperactive and obsessive and compulsive and all kinds of other bullshit, which is just a today translation for brilliant human being who changes the world.
I love it. I love it. And yet there's a large percentage of people who you believe don't fit into that mold and therefore shouldn't mess with entrepreneurship.
You want my theory?
I'd love it.
Here's the theory. I don't think you and I are like everybody else. I don't think that what I'm saying is different as in, we need to all hold our hands and say we're different. I think we need to admit that there is a type of person that is different than the rest, and that today society systems don't help us. They break us down. Because the entrepreneurial personality type, me, you, everyone that I like having around me, is a physiologically sensitive, momentum-based being that is highly reactive to constraint. Mm-hmm. Does that speak to you, Jonathan?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we are compelled to go forward. We must go forward. We drive forward. And so when I look at society as a whole, when I look at the human species, I see kind of four different classes. And I think evolutionarily, this all makes sense. Let's go back to tribal times. In tribal times, we needed a big group of the population, especially as poorly designed as human beings are, because we really are poorly designed for survival. Like our young have to be carried around for years.
Right.
We can't really fend for ourselves. We can't really run fast until we're in our teens. Let's be honest, Jonathan, we suck. Compared to any predator out there, we suck terribly. In fact, it's hard to find a predator where the human could win if the predator started growing on the same day. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how the hell did we do this? How did we make it to now? So there's a big percentage of the population that likes to take care of other people, and they like to perform the activities of taking care of other people. Are you familiar with who I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is, nurses and people who clean stuff and gardeners, and they really do enjoy the satisfaction of helping other people with the tactics of assisting. Mm-hmm. Are you one of those people?
I'm not.
Me neither. I can't stand that shit.
But I love to create shit.
I'm glad that they exist, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely.
So the second type of people, second class, is the people who like to talk about things. And now evolutionarily, we needed the people to take care of stuff. We also needed the people who like to talk about things because we didn't have written word. So we needed the person who would go from person to person talking about what was happening today. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like I get told about TV shows. I have no idea what people are talking about. I was just in St. Louis and people kept telling me about the game. I didn't even know what sport they were talking about. But they will tell you about the day. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
People who say, hey, look at the weather. Like what are you talking about the weather?
Yeah.
But we needed them evolutionarily. And today they serve a purpose as well. Are you one of those people?
I've learned to behave one of them.
Do you like small talk?
No.
You're not one of those people. Quit joking around.
People.
Nice try, Jonathan. I'm not letting you into that club. The third set, and now this is a set that if entrepreneurs are going to have conflict, we have conflict with these guys. This is why I say not everyone's a business owner, because there's this group of people. I call them the memorizers, the rule makers, the order takers, the people who want everything to be the same way, the ones who love the status quo, the ones who get on committees and make rules and want to put everybody in the right place. Make sure that your collar's in the right direction. Make sure you do shit the same way today than you did yesterday. And we don't want anything to change. And for Christ's sakes, let's put some regulation around it to make it all okay. Mm-hmm. You know who I'm talking about?
Yep.
You one of those people?
Absolutely not.
Often do you want to punch one of those people in the face?
I've learned to appreciate them, but yeah.
You're better than me. Because when I was trying to get a piece of medical equipment onto a plane, and the stewardess explained to me the regulation of what I should have done and the fact that I had flown with it for months and nobody had ever said anything. And then a half hour later, she walked over to me with a rule book to show me in 12-point type how she was right and I was wrong. Jesus.
Yeah.
But evolutionarily, those people made sense. We needed people to make rules, to put things in order, to organize, to make sure we had food for the winter, right? So now if you look at society as a whole, our tribe, our human tribe, evolutionarily, we have the people who take care of people, the oral tradition communication, the people who put things in order and make the rules. What are we missing for a tribe to survive, Jonathan?
People who push society forward.
In an evolutionary tribe, those are the hunters. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You, me, every great entrepreneur in history is an evolutionary hunter. We wake up every day going on the hunt. And we both know that every time you've had a kill, every time you've approached the finish line, every time a goal has clarified for you and you are finally crossing that line, it loses importance as you go over it because we are evolutionarily programmed to go right back on the hunt again.
Yep.
And so when I look at society as a whole, I think we are fundamentally different as entrepreneurs. We are the class of people who are meant to positively evolve humanity every single day. And that's why we get up and sometimes don't even sleep because we want to move things forward, create progress, change the status quo, and improve things for everyone. We are the hunters.
So do you think people listening in the audience, do you think you just know if you're an entrepreneur? Or are there people who are on the fence? And if there are, how do they determine, because society has made entrepreneurship so sexy. There's so many news articles about so many successful entrepreneurs and all these 17-year-old kids making millions. I've encountered a lot of people in my path who are like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing this entrepreneurship thing. How do they know? I mean, you've worked with some of the world's most successful entrepreneurs. What would you tell to those people? What criteria would you give them that says, hey, listen, you don't got what it takes? Let me save you some effort, or
I can make it simple. There's 3 awakenings of the entrepreneurial personality type, and I already tested one with you and 2. So the first one is that you have the same innate motivation that Jonathan talked about, where you cannot turn it off, because that's not everyone. You can't be a toll collector and have an innate motivation. It doesn't work. So if you have that, you might be an entrepreneurial personality type. I think you are. The second qualifier is, did you know you were different from everyone around you? And do you know you're different? Because if you know you're fundamentally different, then to me, that is a reflection to you that you are part of our tribe, the entrepreneurial personality type. Because the people who ask too many questions, who want to press forward, change the status quo, are often isolated because we're so different. And then the third qualifier, and here's the big one. You're the only one who can answer this. We call it the call of contribution. Are you hearing this voice in the back of your head that says, Jonathan, there's something more important here. There's something more for you to give, more for you to be. You should grow this bigger. You should do more. You should have more around you. You should make a greater contribution, change it even bigger, make a greater dent in the universe. And that call of contribution can get so loud, it can be all you hear. Have you been there, Jonathan?
Yeah. Why do you think I'm single, Alex?
No shit. No shit. That's why I was single until I was 30.
Yeah, bingo. Because it's like you almost feel like you're betraying your nature.
You know what? So you tell me if that's not how an evolutionary hunter talks.
Totally.
If I'm not out making the kill, I'm betraying who I am.
Totally.
So when somebody says, is everyone an entrepreneur? My answer is no. But if you have those 3 awakenings, I don't care what you're doing right now, you can succeed as one of us.
Totally. I love it. Alex, let me ask you another question. I know we're coming up close to time. We got a little bit more time, but let me ask if there are any other habits or behaviors or rituals that you engage in that increase your performance or help you increase the performance of the people you work with.
Absolutely. I am a fanatic about ritual and behavior. And if you can't tell already, one of the most effective is water. And I know everybody thinks I'm crazy when I say that, but I've been coaching high productivity, high success hunter entrepreneurs my entire career, some of the most successful on the planet. And by the way, some that didn't even know they could be successful until they finally connected mind and body. And if you look at the last 6,000 years, not the last 150 because it's all bullshit, but the last 6,000 years of medical research around water. And by the way, in a lot of ways, I consider the older stuff a lot better than the newer stuff because all they want to do is sell pills now.
Totally.
And so if you go backwards in time, water was a cure for just about everything, including things like stomach aches, depression, frustration, irritation, hyperactivity,
headache,
feeling jittery. Yeah. If you look at the top 20 prescription drugs today, they treat dehydration.
Right.
They don't treat anything else besides dehydration. They have fancy names like ADD and Crohn's and bipolar and depression and all kinds of other crap that's really a grouping of symptoms caused by the lack of water and the increase of toxicity in the body. So I have a program at getthirstynow.com. We call it the 10-Day Natural Thirst Challenge, and I put it up. It's free. Anybody can take it. Doctors give it out to their patients. We have gyms that give it out to people who go to the gym, because if you can start the habit of hyperhydration and really consuming enough water for you, you will connect mind and body in a way that you never thought possible, and you will see everything change. To me, water is the gateway drug to long-term success.
That's amazing. I actually really wanted to ask you about this. How does an online program get me to actually drink more water? Because I know I'm underhydrated most of the time.
The challenge for most of us, Jonathan, is that thirst is a very subtle instinct. Because evolutionarily, survival-wise, if you were walking around and you were an evolutionary hunter and you hadn't seen water in 2 hours and you walked by a pond that looked like it was safe, what do you think you would do?
Probably drink from it.
Do you think you'd drink like a couple sips?
Yeah, probably, I guess.
Have you ever seen a dog drink?
Yeah, it's like a couple laps, right?
Well, have you ever seen a dog drink?
Yeah.
Because when a dog drinks, they just go to town. They'll finish a half a water bowl. And the only species on the planet that sips is human beings.
Mm-hmm.
There's not another species that takes like little pecks at water. Every other species goes bananas and drinks all the water they can until they don't want it anymore. And what I think we've done as human beings is we've turned off our natural thirst instinct to hyperhydrate. So there's 3 simple steps, and I know we're running out of time, but you can watch the program for all the scientific background because it gives people like us a lot of leverage. But step number 1, when you get up in the morning, first thing, drink 16 ounces or more of water. I call that hyperhydration. 16 ounces of water increases your metabolism 30%. It allows your body to detoxify. And when you drink more than 16 ounces of water, passing through the thoracic cavity, it actually relaxes the upper body. This allows your body to actually release a little bit of dopamine. So you get a euphoric feeling off of hyperhydration. You tell me that evolutionarily, there's not some programming there that says drink water more often and drink a lot.
Right.
And then the second thing all day, every day, this is a big one, proximity to water. So rule number 1, hyperhydration. Rule number 2, have water with you all the time. My water bottle that's red is sitting right next to me. And if you ever see me speaking at a keynote, on a broadcast, even on TV, it's always sitting right next to me because I will not hesitate to drink. And that's the third rule. If you think, drink. If you so much as glance at a water bottle, go drink, hyperhydrate. Here's what happens, Jonathan. I've taken people who drink as little as no water a day or maybe a couple of glasses a week, and they get up into the 200-300 ounces a day. And yes, you pee a lot. However, you experience a new level of mental clarity and physiological momentum that you just never have before.
Brilliant. Okay. I like that. And I have to admit, I'm pretty surprised that that is not a tip that has come up. I don't think ever. I mean, the hyperhydration, everyone talks about like, make sure you're drinking enough water. No one talks about like, just go for broke with it. And, you know, we've done 80 something episodes. So that's a nice takeaway for the audience. Alex, I want to transition into the kind of closing questions. I feel like we're going to have you back on the show because I feel like you have so much wisdom to share, but talk to me about books that have impacted you.
The biggest impact any book has ever had is Think and Grow Rich.
Okay.
When I was younger, I read that book, and I think that it's the most often purchased but fewest read book in the world, because I talk to people all the time. Have you read Think and Grow Rich? They say, yeah. Then I ask 2 questions. They haven't.
Yeah.
It is a difficult book to read. I know it's a struggle. I've read it hundreds of times, and I have so much feeling around that book. My wife actually bought me a first edition so I can read it in the original text.
Wow.
If you commit to that book, it'll change your life. Another one is How to Win Friends and Influence People.
I knew it. I was going to say, you're exhibiting all the Dale Carnegie-isms.
It's so simple. You know, it's just so easy to follow what Carnegie put down. Because here's what I think Carnegie was. I think he was like the worst communicator in the history of the world, just like you and I were when we were younger. And he said, oh, shit, I've got some strategies that are working. And he started writing them down.
Totally.
And if you apply them, people like you.
Totally. It's my favorite book.
And I never had people like me before, right?
Totally.
But it was the first textbook my kids ever got for homeschooling.
That's brilliant. I was spot on, like at assessing. I was like, this guy's Dale Carnegieing me.
There's no question. And you know why? It's just the right way to treat people, because you can maintain momentum in a conversation with someone.
That's the thing. Like, if it's authentic, it's not gimmicky, right? Like,
no.
People really like when you smile at them. Like, try it.
Yeah. And then I'll give you a third one. And this one's a little obscure, but man, it's such a good one. It's called The Highest Goal. And it was written by Michael Ray. And he's a professor. It was a professor at Stanford. And he taught the Stanford Creativity Project. And I like reading books that have the right reason they were written. And this book was written because so many people who had gone to these creativity classes, like Jeff Bezos from Amazon and Larry Ellison and all of these incredibly wildly successful CEOs, begged Michael Ray to write the book about the Creativity Project so that people could go through the same framework on their own. Mm-hmm. And dude, if that is a dense book, The Highest Goal is hard to read. But every chapter is like 6 months of life lessons. And when I finally read that and really internalized it and did all of the work, it changed everything for me.
Whoa. All right. That's a huge endorsement. I'm going to need to read that one because I actually haven't even heard of it. Alex, I want to ask our semi-closing question, which is, you've given us a ton of huge actionable takeaway information here, but let's assume people are only able 10 years from now to remember one thing that you talked about, or they take away one thing, even if it's a new thing. What would you hope that that would be?
There is nothing wrong with you, and you are not alone. People like you and I, for our entire lives, have felt judgment. We've felt isolated. We've felt different. We've felt confused. We've even had our confusion mistaken for anger. We've even raised our hand and asked for help and been told to sit down and be quiet. For everyone who's ever felt like you were different or isolated or alone, I want you to go through a simple exercise and think back through history, whether it's today, current, or anyone in history that you remember, anyone in history that matters to be remembered. And I want you to know that they were just like us. And it doesn't matter how different or how alone you felt. You're part of that club.
Brilliant. Alex, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you today. I'm sure it's not the last time we're talking. And if our audience wants to get in touch with you, learn more about you, where would you like us to send them?
They should go to Facebook and they can check out the Entrepreneurial Personality Type group. And what we have on that group is where I put a bunch of our stuff. I put our newest videos. I put our newest information. There's about 5,000 entrepreneurs in there. It's an incredible group. And then also, we set everyone up with a free download of my book, The Entrepreneurial Personality Type. It will teach you more about yourself. It will help you stop limiting behaviors and create momentum. And you can go to Charfen.com, my last name, CHARFEN.com/becoming superhuman, one word. And we set that up for you, Jonathan. So the next time I come on, we've already got it.
Brilliant. I'm looking forward to it already, brother.
Thank you so much, man. This has been a true pleasure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Pleasure was all mine, Alex. You take care.
Talk to you soon, man.
All right, super friends, that's it for this week's episode. We hope you really, really enjoyed it and learned a ton of applicable stuff that can help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If so, please do us a favor and leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or however you found this podcast. In addition to that, we are always looking for great guest posts on the blog or awesome guests right here on the podcast. So if you know somebody or you are somebody or you have thought of somebody who would be a great fit for the show or for our blog, please reach out to us either on Twitter or by email. Our email is info@becomingasuperhuman.com. Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.